The mail-order bride advertisement said nothing about needing steady hands or sharp eyes, but Beatrice Allen had both as she stepped off the dusty stagecoach in Taylorsville, Utah, on a scorching afternoon in August 1876. She wore a practical traveling dress the color of dried sage, her auburn hair pinned neatly beneath a simple bonnet, and carried one weathered carpet bag that contained everything she owned in this world. The town sprawled before her like a collection of wooden bones bleached by the relentless sun, and somewhere in this heat-shimmered settlement waited Ethan Grant, the rancher who had answered her letter with promises of a good home and honest work. She had expected someone to meet her at the station, but the platform stood empty except for a mangy dog sleeping in whatever shade it could find. Beatrice set down her bag and pulled the worn envelope from her pocket, reading the address again, though she had memorized it weeks ago. The Double G Ranch, 3 miles west of town. She looked down the main street, past the saloon and general store, toward the mountains rising in the distance like jagged teeth against the blue vault of sky. "You looking for someone, miss?" A weathered man in a dusty apron emerged from the mercantile, squinting at her in the bright light. "Ethan Grant," she said, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. "I am expected at his ranch." The man's eyebrows rose slightly. "You're the bride, then?" "Heard tell he sent for someone back east. Name's Morrison, I run the store. Ethan usually comes to town on Fridays for supplies, but that is not until tomorrow." "Then I will need directions to walk there," Beatrice said simply. Morrison looked startled. "Walk?" "Miss, that is 3 miles in this heat, and the sun does not show mercy to anyone foolish enough to challenge it. Best wait until someone heads that way with a wagon." But Beatrice had not traveled alone from Philadelphia, enduring 2 weeks of rattling trains and cramped coaches, only to sit idle on a platform waiting for fate to collect her. "I have walked farther in worse conditions." "Which road?" Something shifted in Morrison's expression, a glimmer of approval or perhaps surprise. He pointed west. "Follow the main road until you see the fork marked by a lightning-split cottonwood. Take the left path and keep going until you see the ranch gates. Cannot miss them, they have got a brand burned into the crossbeam. But miss, truly, the heat. Thank you for your concern and your directions." She picked up her carpetbag and started walking. The heat pressed against her like a physical thing, and within minutes, sweat dampened her collar and temples. Philadelphia had been hot in summer, certainly, but this western heat felt different, drier, more insistent. The road stretched before her in an endless ribbon of packed earth and scattered stones. She focused on putting one foot in front of the other, conserving her energy, breathing steadily through her nose. Her father had taught her that, back when he was still alive and taking her hunting in the Pennsylvania woods. Steady breath, steady hands, steady heart. She had walked perhaps a mile when she heard hoofbeats approaching from behind. Beatrice moved to the side of the road but did not stop walking. A horse drew alongside her, and she glanced up to see a man on a rangy bay gelding. He was perhaps 30 years old, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of creek water in shadow. A worn Stetson shaded his face, and dust covered his clothes like a second skin. "Morrison sent his boy running to the ranch to say you had set out walking," the man said, his voice carrying a hint of exasperation mixed with something that might have been amusement. "I am Ethan Grant." Beatrice stopped and looked up at him properly. He had a strong face, weathered by sun and wind, with lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he smiled more than he frowned. His hands on the reins were calloused and capable. "Mr. Grant, I am Beatrice Allen. I apologize for the inconvenience, but I saw no reason to wait when I had 2 good legs and clear directions." in heat that could drop a mule. He swung down from his horse with easy grace and stood before her, perhaps 3 inches taller than her own respectable height. "You have got more determination than sense, Miss Allen. I have been accused of that before." She met his gaze without flinching. "Though I made it a full mile without dropping, so perhaps I have more resilience than mules in this territory." The corner of his mouth twitched. "Perhaps. But the remaining 2 miles will not be any kinder. Will you accept a ride, or do I need to follow along behind you the whole way to make sure you do not collapse?" "I will ride, thank you." She let him help her onto the horse first, then he mounted behind her, taking the reins on either side. The proximity felt strange and intimate, but Beatrice had long since accepted that propriety was a luxury she could no longer afford. She had agreed to marry a stranger and travel halfway across the continent to do so. Sharing a horse seemed a minor compromise. They rode in silence for a while, the horse's steady gait covering ground far more efficiently than her walking had. Beatrice studied the landscape, so different from everything she had known. Where Pennsylvania had been green and wooded, this Utah territory spread out in shades of brown and gold, with scrub brush and hardy grasses clinging to life wherever they could find purchase. Beautiful in its own harsh way. "What made you answer my advertisement?" Ethan asked finally, his voice close to her ear. She considered her answer carefully. "Practical necessity. My father died 18 months ago and my brother inherited the house. His wife made it clear there was no place for me there. I had 3 choices. Marry a man in Philadelphia who wanted a housekeeper more than a wife, find employment as a seamstress or laundress for wages that would barely keep me fed, or seek better prospects elsewhere. Your letter suggested you were looking for a partner, not just a servant. That appealed to me. And you know what you are getting into. Ranch life is not easy, Miss Allen. It is hard work from dawn until dark, every single day. The summers are brutal and the winters can be worse. We are a long way from theaters and social gatherings." "I did not have much use for those things even in Philadelphia," Beatrice said. "And I am not afraid of hard work, Mr. Grant. I am afraid of uselessness and being a burden. If you give me tasks, I will complete them. That is all I can promise." "That is more than some would promise." He fell quiet again, and Beatrice wondered what he was thinking. Did she disappoint him? She knew she was not a beauty, with her angular features and unfashionable height. Her hands were already rough from years of helping her father with his hunting equipment business, lacking the softness expected of a lady. But she had been honest in her letter, and he had still sent for her, so perhaps he valued honesty over delicacy. The ranch gates appeared ahead, exactly as Morrison had described. 2 sturdy posts supported a crossbeam with the double G brand burned deep into the wood. Beyond stretched a collection of buildings. A main house, barn, stable, bunkhouse, and several other structures she could not immediately identify. Fences marked off corrals and pastures, and she could see cattle grazing in the distance, their hides gleaming in the afternoon sun. "It is bigger than I expected," she admitted. "We run about 300 head, though that number changes with the seasons. I've got 6 hands working for me right now, including my foreman Cole. They are out with the herd today, but you will meet them at dinner. They eat in the bunkhouse, but I thought tonight we might all gather so they can meet you proper." He rode to the main house and helped her down. Beatrice's legs felt shaky after the ride, but she stood straight and took in her new home. The house was single-story but sprawling, built of sturdy timber with a covered porch that wrapped around at least 2 sides. Not fancy, but solid and well-maintained. "I will show you inside," Ethan said, carrying her bag up the steps. "The bedroom is yours until the wedding. I have been sleeping in the bunkhouse with the men." The interior was dim after the bright sunlight and blessedly cooler. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a large table, a cast iron stove, and several chairs arranged around a stone fireplace. Everything was clean but sparse, functional rather than decorative. A hallway led to what she assumed were bedrooms. "The first door is yours," Ethan said, setting down her bag. "There is a wash basin and pitcher. Take whatever time you need to settle in. I have got to check on some things in the barn, but I will be back within the hour." He left before she could respond, and Beatrice found herself alone in the silent house. She walked slowly through the main room, running her hand along the table's worn surface, examining the simple dishes stacked on open shelves. A man's living space, clearly, but not neglected. Someone had swept recently, and the stove, though old, was well maintained. The bedroom was small but adequate, with a narrow bed, a dresser, and a washstand as promised. A single window looked out toward the barn and corrals. Beatrice unpacked her meager belongings, hanging her 2 other dresses on pegs behind the door and arranging her brush, pins, and few personal items on the dresser. At the bottom of her bag, wrapped carefully in oilcloth, was her father's Colt revolver and the small box of ammunition she had managed to save. She had not mentioned the gun in her letters, unsure how a potential husband might react to a woman who knew how to shoot. Now she hesitated, then placed both gun and ammunition in the bottom drawer of the dresser, hidden beneath her undergarments. She washed her face and hands in the basin, the water lukewarm but refreshing after the dusty journey. Then she changed into her other traveling dress, slightly less wrinkled than the one she had worn. When she returned to the main room, Ethan had not yet come back, so she examined the kitchen area more closely. The pantry held basic supplies: flour, cornmeal, dried beans, salt pork, canned goods. Enough to work with, certainly. By the time Ethan returned, she had started a fire in the stove and was assessing what she might prepare for dinner. "You do not need to cook tonight," he said from the doorway. "I thought we might make it simple, just cold meat and bread." "I am perfectly capable of cooking a proper meal," Beatrice replied, "unless you would prefer I did not." He removed his hat and ran a hand through his dark hair. "Miss Allen, you just traveled across half the country and walked a mile in heat that would fell most men. I am not expecting you to immediately start performing household duties. Then what would you have me do? Sit idly?" She turned to face him fully. "Mr. Grant, let us speak plainly. We are strangers who have agreed to marry for practical reasons. I do not expect romance or courtship. What I expect is to make myself useful and earn my place here. So please, tell me what needs doing and let me do it." Something flickered across his face, an emotion she could not quite read. "You are determined to make this as businesslike as possible. Is that not what you wanted? Your advertisement spoke of needing a capable woman to help run a household, not a delicate flower to be sheltered." "That is true enough." He set his hat on the table and met her eyes. "All right then, plain speaking. I have been running this ranch for 8 years since my father died. I built it from near nothing to what it is now. But I am 32 years old, and I have been living like a bachelor, eating half the meals in the bunkhouse and letting the house go to ruin. I want a real home, Miss Allen. I want someone who can manage things while I am out with the herd or dealing with ranch business. I want, eventually, a family, children, but I also want someone who will not wilt under the pressure of this life. You seem like you might be that person." "I am," Beatrice said firmly. "And I want security, a place where I belong and work that matters. We may not love each other, Mr. Grant, but I believe we can build something worthwhile together." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Then I suppose we understand each other." The preacher comes through town once a month. He is due back next Saturday. That gives us a week to decide if we can truly stand each other. That seems reasonable. In the meantime, if you want to cook dinner, I will not stop you. The men will appreciate a woman's cooking, that is certain. We have been living on Cole's attempts at stew, and he has many talents, but cooking is not among them. Beatrice allowed herself a small smile. Then I will do my best not to poison anyone on my first day. She prepared a simple but substantial meal: fried salt pork with gravy, cornbread, and stewed beans. Ethan showed her where everything was kept and helped her carry dishes out to the bunkhouse when the men started returning as the sun dropped toward the horizon. They filed in dusty and tired, their conversation dying when they saw her. "Men, this is Miss Beatrice Allen," Ethan said. "She is going to be my wife, provided the preacher shows up on schedule. Treat her with respect, and she has made dinner, so you have got that to thank her for." They introduced themselves one by one. Cole Matthews, the foreman, a lean man in his 40s with gray threading his temples. Young Danny Pierce, barely 20 with eager eyes. The brothers Jake and Samuel Morrison, cousins to the storekeeper in town. Miguel Rodriguez, quiet and watchful. And finally Jack Turner, who looked to be in his mid-30s with the coldest blue eyes Beatrice had ever seen. "A woman's touch was sorely needed around here," Cole said warmly, and several of the others murmured agreement. Jack Turner said nothing, but his gaze lingered on her in a way that made her skin prickle with unease. The meal passed pleasantly enough, with the men praising her cooking and talking about the day's work. Beatrice mostly listened, learning the rhythm of ranch life through their casual conversation. She noticed how they deferred to Ethan's judgment, how he spoke to them with respect but clear authority. A good leader, then. That was something. After dinner, Ethan walked her back to the main house as twilight settled over the ranch. The air had finally begun to cool, bringing relief from the day's heat. "The men seem to accept you well enough," he said. "Though I should warn you, Jack Turner can be difficult. He is the best shot I have got and useful in rough situations, but he has got a mean streak. Keep your distance from him." "I will," Beatrice promised, though she had already reached that conclusion herself. "Tomorrow I will show you around properly, introduce you to how we run things here. For tonight, get some rest. You have earned it." She bid him good night and retreated to her small bedroom. The bed, though narrow, felt like heaven after so many nights of travel. She lay in the darkness, listening to unfamiliar sounds: the distant lowing of cattle, the whisper of wind through sage, the creak of the house settling. This was her life now, for better or worse. She had made her choice, and Beatrice Allen had never been one to second-guess herself. Morning came with rooster crow and the soft light of dawn filtering through her window. Beatrice dressed quickly and found Ethan already in the kitchen, attempting to make coffee with the grim determination of a man performing an unpleasant duty. "I can do that," she offered. "I will not argue." He stepped aside gratefully. "I was going to let you sleep, but since you are up, would you like to see the ranch?" She made proper coffee while he waited, then walked with him as the sun climbed higher. He showed her the barn where they kept the horses, the chicken coop that desperately needed a woman's attention, the smokehouse, the root cellar, the workshop. He explained the rotation of the herd, the water sources that meant life or death in this dry country, the constant challenges of keeping predators away and cattle healthy. "You have trouble with rustlers?" she asked. "Some. Less than we used to. The territorial marshal has been cracking down, and most of the organized gangs have moved on to easier targets. But you still have got to stay vigilant." They walked to the corral where several horses stood in the morning sun. Ethan pointed out his favorites, explaining each animal's temperament and strengths. "Do you ride, Miss Allen? I learned as a girl, though it has been some years. I imagine I would manage. You will need to, living out here. We are too far from town to walk regularly, and you should know how to handle a horse in case of emergency. He studied her thoughtfully. Can you shoot? The question caught her off guard, though perhaps it should not have. Yes, my father taught me. He made hunting rifles and pistols, and he believed I should know how to use them properly. That is good. Every person on a ranch should know how to handle a firearm. We have got snakes, coyotes, and worse to deal with. He paused. I do not suppose you brought a weapon with you. I have my father's Colt, she admitted. I did not mention it in my letters because I thought it might seem unladylike. To her surprise, Ethan laughed. Miss Allen, unladylike is the least of my concerns. Capable is what matters. Can you actually hit what you aim at? I could when I practiced regularly. I imagine I am rusty now. Then we should remedy that. This afternoon, if you are willing, we can do some target practice. I want to see what you can do. After lunch, Ethan set up a row of bottles on fence posts about 30 yards from where they stood. Cole had heard about the impromptu shooting lesson and wandered over to watch, along with Danny and Jack Turner. Beatrice tried to ignore their audience and focus on the familiar weight of her father's Colt in her hand. She had cleaned and loaded it that morning, the mechanical ritual soothing her nerves. Take your time, Ethan said beside her. No pressure. But there was pressure, of course. These men would judge her capability based on this performance, and she had spent too many years proving herself to men who doubted her. Beatrice raised the pistol, sighted down the barrel, controlled her breathing exactly as her father had taught her. Squeezed the trigger gently rather than pulling. The gunshot cracked across the still air and the first bottle exploded into glittering shards. She adjusted her stance slightly and fired again. Another bottle shattered, then a third, a fourth. 5 shots, 5 broken bottles, the last fragment still falling as she lowered the gun. The silence stretched for a heartbeat before Cole let out a low whistle. I will be damned. Where did you learn to shoot like that? Philadelphia, Beatrice said simply. My father believed in practical education. You shoot better than Danny, Ethan said, and the young man flushed but nodded agreement. Better than the Morrison brothers, too. That is competition-level accuracy, Miss Allen. I had a good teacher. She reloaded carefully, aware of Jack Turner's cold gaze fixed on her. He had not said a word, but something in his posture had shifted, become hostile in a way that made her skin crawl. Let me see you do it again, Jack said flatly. Could have been luck. Ethan frowned. Jack, that is not— No, it is all right, Beatrice interrupted. She did not look at Jack, keeping her focus on Ethan. Set up more bottles. Ethan replaced the targets, this time arranging them in a less uniform pattern. Beatrice waited until he stepped clear, then raised the pistol and fired methodically. 6 bottles this time, 6 shots, and when the smoke cleared, only empty fence posts remained. Satisfied? She asked Jack without turning to look at him. He spat in the dust. I guess she can shoot. Still seems unnatural, a woman handling a gun like that. Seems mighty useful to me, Cole said sharply. Ethan, you have got yourself a rare find here. Most women coming from back east would not know which end of a pistol to hold. Ethan was looking at her with an expression she could not quite decipher. Surprise, certainly, but also something that might have been respect or even admiration. Miss Allen, I am impressed. Genuinely. Would you be willing to show the younger hands some techniques? Danny and Sam could both use improvement. If you think it would be helpful. I think, Ethan said slowly, that you might be more valuable than I realized. Over the following days, Beatrice fell into the rhythm of ranch life. She woke before dawn to make breakfast, spent her mornings managing the household and tending the chickens. her afternoons often working with Danny and Sam on their shooting technique. Cole had suggested she might also help with the ranch accounts, and she discovered Ethan's bookkeeping was competent but disorganized. She set about creating a proper system, tracking expenses and income with the precision she had learned helping her father manage his business. She also began to know Ethan himself, in the small moments between work. He was quiet but not unkind, and he had a dry sense of humor that emerged unexpectedly. When a hen escaped the coop and led Beatrice on a ridiculous chase through the yard, Ethan watched for a moment before commenting, "That one is named Trouble for a reason." When she finally caught the bird, he added, "Though I admit she met her match today." They talked in the evenings sometimes, sitting on the porch as the heat finally released its grip on the day. He told her about building the ranch, about the struggles of those early years when he had nearly lost everything to a harsh winter and falling cattle prices. She told him about her father, about watching his business slowly fail as cheaper manufactured weapons flooded the market, about the helpless frustration of watching him work himself to death trying to save something that could not be saved. "He sounds like a good man," Ethan said. He was. Stubborn and proud, but good. Beatrice leaned back in her chair, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "I miss him terribly, but I think he would approve of this. Of me taking control of my own fate rather than accepting whatever scraps my brother was willing to throw my way." "Your brother sounds like a fool." "His wife certainly is. She saw me as competition for resources, and she convinced him I was trying to manipulate him. Perhaps I should have tried harder to make peace, but I have never been skilled at feminine politics and flattery." "Neither has this territory," Ethan said. "Udall has got no patience for delicacy, Miss Allen. You need to be tough to survive here, man or woman. That toughness in you, that is not a flaw. It is going to keep you alive." Saturday arrived with clear skies and nerves that Beatrice refused to acknowledge. The preacher had indeed arrived on schedule, and the wedding was set for that afternoon in town. Beatrice wore her best dress, a deep blue that had been her mother's, altered to fit her taller frame. She arranged her hair as carefully as she could manage, studying her reflection in the small mirror and wondering if she should feel more emotional about her wedding day. Instead, she felt calm, resolved, ready. Ethan drove her to town in the wagon, dressed in clothes she had not seen before, clean trousers, a pressed white shirt, a vest. He looked different, almost formal and oddly handsome. "You clean up well," she said, and immediately felt foolish, but he smiled. "So do you, Miss Allen. That color suits you." The ceremony took place in the small church with Cole and Morrison standing as witnesses. The preacher, an elderly man with kind eyes, kept it brief and practical. Beatrice repeated her vows clearly, feeling the weight of each promise. To honor, to cherish in sickness and health. She meant the words even without romantic love. She would be a good wife to this man who had given her a chance at a real life. When Ethan kissed her at the ceremony's conclusion, it was brief and chaste, but not unkind. His lips were warm, and when he pulled back, his gray-green eyes searched hers with something that might have been hope. "Mrs. Grant," he said softly. "Mr. Grant," she replied, and felt the strangest flutter in her chest. This was real now, permanent. They had dinner at the small restaurant in town, joined by Cole and a few others who wanted to wish them well. Morrison presented them with a set of dishes as a wedding gift, his wife having insisted. The celebration was modest but genuine, and Beatrice found herself laughing at Cole's stories about Ethan's early days trying to run the ranch while barely knowing which end of a cow was which. "He learned fast, though," Cole said. "I will give him that. Man works harder than any two people I have known. Nearly killed himself that first winter, but he got us through. With your help," Ethan said. "I would have been lost without Cole. He taught me most of what I know about actually running cattle." "Where did you work before this?" Beatrice asked Cole. "Texas, mostly. Spent 20 years on various ranches down there before I decided the heat was finally getting to me. Came north looking for something cooler and found Ethan's help wanted notice in a Denver newspaper. Best decision I ever made. This is good land, good cattle, good boss." They returned to the ranch as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and crimson. Ethan helped her down from the wagon, and suddenly the reality of the situation hit her. They were married now. She would be expected to share his bed, to fulfill a wife's duties. Her pulse quickened with an anxiety she had not let herself feel until this moment. Ethan must have sensed her tension because he paused at the porch steps. "Beatrice," he said, using her first name for perhaps the first time. "We do not need to rush anything. I know this marriage is built on practical foundations rather than passion. I will not force you to anything you are not ready for." "I am your wife now," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I understand what that means." "Yes, but you are also a person who deserves respect and patience." He met her eyes in the fading light. "Let us simply share space tonight. Get used to that first. Everything else can wait." Relief flooded through her, followed by a surprising warmth of gratitude. "Thank you, that is kind of you." "It is not kindness. It is basic decency." He opened the door and let her precede him into the house. "Though I admit I am not exactly skilled at this myself. I have never been married before, and my experience with women is limited. We are both finding our way." That admission, that vulnerability, made her like him more than anything else he could have said. They prepared for bed with careful politeness, Ethan changing in the main room while Beatrice used the bedroom. When he finally entered wearing just his undershirt and trousers, she was already beneath the blankets, her heart hammering despite his earlier reassurance. He lay down carefully on the far edge of the bed, leaving a clear space between them. "Good night, Beatrice." "Good night, Ethan." She lay awake for a long time, intensely aware of his presence, the sound of his breathing, the warmth radiating from his body. But he kept his word, made no move toward her, and eventually exhaustion claimed her. The days that followed established a new rhythm. Beatrice continued managing the household and helping with ranch tasks, but now she did so as Ethan's wife rather than a temporary guest. The men treated her with respect, though Jack Turner remained coldly distant. She noticed him watching her sometimes with an expression she could not read, but she took Ethan's advice and kept her distance. A week after the wedding, trouble came to the Double G Ranch in the form of a missing calf and signs of intruders near the north pasture. Ethan gathered his men in the early morning, his face grim. "Someone cut the fence and drove off at least 6 head, maybe more," he said. "Cole found tracks heading northeast toward the canyon country. We need to go after them now before the trail gets cold." "Take me with you," Beatrice said. Every man turned to stare at her. Ethan's eyebrows rose. "This is not a Sunday ride, Beatrice. We are tracking rustlers." "I know what you are tracking, and I can shoot better than half your men, as you well know." "Would you rather leave someone behind to protect the ranch, or take every capable person you have?" "She has got a point," Cole said slowly. "If these are part of the Jackson gang, they might double back to hit the ranch while we are gone. Better to have more guns with us." "You ever shot at a person, Mrs. Grant?" Jack Turner asked, his tone mocking. "It is different than bottles." "I have never shot at a person, no," Beatrice said evenly. "But I imagine if someone is stealing from my husband and threatening my home, I will manage." Ethan studied her for a long moment. "If you come, you follow orders, mine or Cole's without question. This is not the time for independence, I understand." "Then saddle up. We leave in 10 minutes. Beatrice changed quickly into her riding clothes and retrieved her pistol. When she emerged, Ethan had prepared a horse for her, a steady mare named Duchess. She mounted efficiently and took her place among the men, aware of Jack's skeptical glare and Cole's approving nod. They rode hard toward the north pasture, following the trail that Cole and Ethan had found earlier. The tracks were clear enough, several horses, cattle being driven at speed. The rustlers had not bothered to hide their trail, which suggested either arrogance or desperation. "We are about an hour behind them," Cole estimated, studying the disturbed earth. "If we push, we can close that gap before they reach the canyon." They pushed. Beatrice leaned low over Duchess's neck, keeping pace with the men, her thighs already aching from the unfamiliar exertion. The sun climbed higher, beating down without mercy, but she ignored the discomfort and focused on riding. They spotted the rustlers in a narrow valley between two ridges, exactly where Cole had predicted they would be. 4 men driving a dozen head of cattle, moving at a steady pace but clearly not expecting pursuit so soon. Ethan raised his hand to halt the group, and they stopped on the ridge overlooking the valley. "We outnumber them," Ethan said quietly. "But they are cornered now, and cornered men are dangerous. Cole, take Danny and Miguel around to the east to cut off their escape. Jack, Sam, and Beatrice, you are with me. We will come down from this side. If they run, we let them go. The cattle are what matter. But if they fight, you defend yourselves." "Understood." Everyone nodded. Beatrice checked her pistol, making sure it was loaded and ready. Her hands were steady, her breathing calm. She could do this. They split up, Cole's group circling while Ethan led his team carefully down the ridge. They were halfway down when one of the rustlers spotted them and shouted a warning. The other thieves grabbed for their weapons, and suddenly the valley erupted into chaos. A shot rang out, kicking up dust near Duchess's hooves. The mare shied, but Beatrice held her steady, reaching for her pistol. Ethan was already returning fire, his shots forcing the rustlers to take cover. Sam and Jack spread out, creating a crossfire. Beatrice spotted one rustler taking aim at Ethan from behind a boulder. She did not hesitate, did not think, just raised her pistol and fired. The man yelped and dropped his gun, clutching his shoulder. Not a fatal shot, but enough to take him out of the fight. "Good shooting," Ethan called, and there was no time to feel proud or horrified because another rustler was swinging his rifle toward her. She fired again, this time aiming for the rifle itself. The bullet struck wood, and the weapon flew from the man's hands. He scrambled backward, suddenly unarmed. Cole's group appeared on the eastern side, and the rustlers realized they were surrounded. The 2 men still standing threw down their weapons and raised their hands in surrender. The whole confrontation had lasted perhaps 2 minutes, though it felt like hours. "Danny, tie them up," Ethan ordered. "Miguel, check the wounded one. Beatrice shot him, so she is responsible if he bleeds out." Beatrice dismounted on shaking legs and approached the man she had shot. He was young, maybe 25, and his shoulder was bleeding freely but not spurting. "The bullet went through," she said, examining the wound with as much detachment as she could manage. "He will live if we get him bandaged properly." "You crazy woman," the rustler gasped. "You shot me. You were about to shoot my husband," Beatrice replied calmly, though her hands trembled as she tore strips from his shirt to bind the wound. "Be grateful I did not aim for somewhere more vital." Ethan appeared beside her, his hand touching her shoulder briefly. "You all right?" "I am fine. Is anyone hurt?" "Not a scratch on our side, thanks in part to you. You saved my life back there." She finished tying off the bandage and stood, finally meeting his eyes. What she saw there made her breath catch. Respect, certainly, but also something warmer, something that looked almost like awe. I told you I could shoot, she said, aiming for lightness. So you did. I just did not expect you to be so calm about it in a real fight. He smiled then, genuine and warm. You are full of surprises, Mrs. Grant. They rounded up the cattle and tied the rustlers to their horses for the ride back to town. The territorial marshal would want to deal with them properly. The journey back was slower, more triumphant, the men joking and recounting the brief battle with the exaggeration of those who had survived danger intact. I have never seen anything like it, Danny said enthusiastically. Mrs. Grant just calm as anything, picking off targets like it was target practice. You should have seen Jack's face. My face was just fine, Jack growled, but there was less hostility in his voice than usual. He rode closer to Beatrice as they neared the ranch. You shoot all right. I will give you that. Thank you, Beatrice said, recognizing the compliment for the significant concession it was. They delivered the rustlers to the marshal in Taylorsville, who seemed both impressed and bemused by Beatrice's role in their capture. Heard you could shoot, Mrs. Grant, but did not quite believe it until now. You have got more sand than most men I know. I just protected what was mine, she said simply. That evening, after the excitement had faded and they were alone in their house, Ethan poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed her one. To my wife, he said, raising his glass, who shoots better than my best hand. Beatrice felt heat rise in her cheeks. That is not, it is true. Jack Turner has been my best shot since I hired him 3 years ago, but you are better. Faster, more accurate, calmer under pressure. I saw it today. He took a sip of his whiskey. Beatrice, I need to tell you something. She waited, heart suddenly pounding. When I sent for a mail-order bride, I was looking for competence and companionship, someone to share the work. I did not expect to actually like the person who answered my advertisement. But I like you. Your strength, your practicality, your dry sense of humor, the way you refuse to be intimidated by anything. Today you saved my life, and you did it without hesitation or drama. You just did what needed doing. That is what we agreed to, Beatrice said softly. Partners. Working together. Yes, but I am realizing it could be more than that, if you wanted. He set down his glass and took a careful step closer. I know we married for practical reasons, but I find myself wanting this to be a real marriage, Beatrice, in every sense. Not just business partners sharing a house, but true partners. Man and wife. She looked up at him, at his serious face and hopeful eyes, and felt something shift in her chest. Somewhere between Philadelphia and now, between the shooting lessons and the quiet evening conversations and today's shared danger, she had begun to care for this man. To want his respect, his approval, his smile. To imagine a future that was more than just survival. I would like that, she whispered. He cupped her face gently, his calloused hands warm against her skin. May I kiss you properly this time? Yes. His mouth met hers, and this kiss was nothing like the chaste brush of lips at their wedding. This was heat and hunger, promise and possibility. Beatrice's hands found his shoulders, holding on as the kiss deepened. She had been kissed before, awkward encounters with boys in Philadelphia, but this was different. This was a man who saw her fully and wanted her anyway. This was the beginning of something real. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. You are the most remarkable woman I have ever met. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you are brave and capable and honest. I know you face challenges head-on instead of hiding from them. I know I want to spend every day learning more about you. He pulled back slightly to meet her eyes. Will you let me? Yes, she smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. Yes, Ethan, I want that too. They made love that night for the first time, tender and awkward and real. Beatrice had been nervous, uncertain, but Ethan was patient and gentle. and by the end she understood what all the whispered conversations between married women had been trying to convey. This intimacy, this vulnerability shared, it changed things, made the bond between them tangible and true. Afterward, lying in the darkness with Ethan's arm around her, Beatrice felt a contentment she had never known. This life she had chosen, this strange frontier marriage, it was becoming something precious, something worth fighting for. The weeks that followed were the happiest Beatrice had known. She and Ethan fell into an easy partnership, working together during the day and finding each other at night. He taught her more about ranching, trusting her with increasing responsibility. She reorganized the entire household system, making everything more efficient and productive. They talked for hours about their hopes and plans for the future. "I want to expand the herd next year," Ethan told her one evening. "There is good grazing land to the south that we could lease, maybe eventually buy. If we can get through this winter with minimal losses, we will have the capital." "We should also consider diversifying," Beatrice suggested. "Relying entirely on cattle prices is risky. What about horses? You have the facilities, and good horses always find buyers." He considered this. "That is not a bad idea. Cole knows horses as well as he knows cattle. We could start small, see how it goes." "This is good," Beatrice said, gesturing between them. "Planning together, building something." "It is. You know, when I sent for a mail-order bride, I never imagined this, having a true partner, someone who thinks about the ranch's future as much as I do. Someone who cares." "I do care. This is my home now, my life. I want it to succeed." "Our life," Ethan corrected gently. "Our home, we are in this together now." She leaned into him, feeling safe and valued. "Together, I like the sound of that." But peace never lasted long in the Wild West. Trouble returned in early October, when strange things started happening around the ranch. Tools went missing and turned up in odd places. A section of fence was cut, though no cattle were taken. Someone left the barn doors open one night and 2 horses wandered off, though they were found unharmed the next morning. "Someone is messing with us," Cole said grimly, "trying to rattle us or cause trouble." "But why?" Danny asked. "We got the rustlers, turned them over to the marshal." "What more do they want?" "Revenge, maybe," Sam suggested. "Or maybe it is not related at all. Could be someone with a different grudge." Ethan increased patrols and made sure someone was always watching the ranch buildings at night. Beatrice kept her pistol close and slept lightly, listening for anything unusual. But whoever was behind the mischief was clever, always striking when and where they were not watching. The answer came one afternoon when Beatrice was in the barn checking on the chickens. She heard a noise from the loft above and called out, thinking it was one of the men. Instead, Jack Turner appeared at the top of the ladder, his expression dark. "Mr. Turner," she said carefully, "I did not know you were up there." "I know you did not. You do not know a lot of things, Mrs. Grant." He descended the ladder slowly, deliberately. "You do not know that this ranch should be mine, that I worked it for 3 years before you showed up with your fancy shooting and your Eastern ways. I do not understand." "Mr. Grant hired you as a hand, not he promised me a partnership," Jack interrupted, his voice rising. "Said if I stuck with him through the hard times, he would make me part owner. Then you showed up, and suddenly I am just another hired gun while you play rancher's wife and take what should have been mine." Beatrice's hand moved toward her pistol, but Jack was faster. His own gun appeared in his hand, pointed directly at her chest. "I would not." "You might be fast, but not faster than a bullet already aimed." "Ethan never mentioned any partnership," Beatrice said, keeping her voice calm despite her racing heart. "Are you certain he actually promised that?" "He did not have to say it outright. I knew, I could tell. But then he sent for you instead, and everything changed." Jack's face twisted with bitterness. I have been trying to make you leave. Thought if enough things went wrong, you would decide ranch life was too much and run back to Philadelphia. But you are too stubborn. So now we need to have a more direct conversation. About what? You want me to leave, to abandon my husband. I want you to convince Ethan to make me a partner. You have got influence over him now. I have seen how he looks at you, how he listens to you. Tell him it is the right thing to do, that I have earned it, or else these little accidents are going to get worse, more dangerous, maybe someone gets hurt. That is a threat. That is a promise. Jack's eyes were cold. You are smart, Mrs. Grant. You have got to see I am serious. Make this happen, or you will regret it. Beatrice heard footsteps outside and saw Jack's attention flicker for just an instant. She did not hesitate. Her hand flashed to her pistol, drew, and fired in one smooth motion. Jack's gun went flying from his hand as her bullet struck it dead center. He yelped and stumbled backward, clutching his stinging fingers. Ethan burst through the barn door, his own gun drawn with Cole right behind him. They took in the scene instantly. Beatrice with her smoking pistol, Jack disarmed and cornered. What in God's name is going on? Ethan demanded. Mr. Turner has been behind the troubles, Beatrice said, her voice remarkably steady. He believes you promised him a partnership and is angry that I took what he thinks should be his. He threatened to cause more accidents, potentially hurt someone, unless I convinced you to make him a partner. Is this true? Ethan turned to Jack, his face like thunder. Jack straightened, defiant despite being caught. You know it is true. We talked about it that first year when things were so hard. You said loyal men would be rewarded. I said I would pay fair wages and treat good workers with respect. I never promised anyone a partnership, Jack. This ranch is mine, built with my money and my sweat. I have got no obligation to share ownership with anyone except my wife. That is a lie. Enough. Cole's voice cracked like a whip. Boy, I have known Ethan since he started this operation. He has never promised partnerships to anyone. You invented that in your head, and now you are threatening violence over something that never existed. Pack your things, Ethan said coldly. You are done here. I want you off my property within the hour. You cannot. I can and I am. You threatened my wife, Jack. You sabotaged my ranch. I should turn you over to the marshal, but I am giving you one chance to ride away and never come back. Take it. Jack's face went red with fury, but he must have seen the steel in Ethan's expression. He shoved past them and stormed out of the barn. They watched him go, tension thick in the air, until they heard him gathering his things from the bunkhouse. Are you all right? Ethan asked Beatrice, his hands gentle as they checked her over. Did he hurt you? I am fine. He never touched me. She looked down at her pistol, still in her hand, and carefully holstered it. Though I admit my heart is racing now. That was the finest shooting I have ever seen, Cole said with genuine admiration. You did not even look like you were aiming, just drew and fired and took the gun clean out of his hand. Most men could not make that shot in a month of trying. My father taught me never to aim where you might kill if you can aim somewhere else first, Beatrice said. I could have shot him, but I just wanted him disarmed. Ethan pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. You are amazing, and I am so sorry. I should have seen Jack's resentment, should have dealt with it before it got this bad. You could not have known. He hid it well. They watched from the porch as Jack Turner rode away 20 minutes later, his belongings packed and his face still twisted with anger. He did not look back. Cole posted extra guards that night just in case he tried to return, but the former ranch hand apparently knew when he was beaten. Problem is, I now need to find a new hand before winter, Ethan said that evening, studying the ranch accounts with Beatrice. And good men are not easy to find this late in the season. Then do not look for a man, Beatrice said. Look for the right person. What do you mean? I mean that I can do more around here than I have been. I can ride, shoot, and work as hard as any hand you might hire. Give me more responsibility. You have got Cole, Danny, Miguel, and the Morrison brothers. That is 5 men plus you. Add me in where I am needed and you have got 6 workers. We can manage until spring. Ethan looked at her thoughtfully. You really want to do ranch work? Not just household management. I want to do whatever helps us succeed. This is my ranch too now, Ethan, our ranch. Let me be a full partner in every way. He was quiet for a long moment, then a slow smile spread across his face. You know what? That makes sense. You are running this place anyway, whether we call it that or not. From now on, you make decisions about ranch operations just like I do. If you see something that needs doing, you do it or delegate it. If someone asks you something and I am not around, your word is as good as mine. Truly. Truly, partners in everything. He pulled her close and kissed her forehead. You are running this place with me, Beatrice. Might as well make it official. The next morning, he gathered the remaining hands and made the announcement. From now on, Mrs. Grant has full authority over ranch operations. You take orders from her same as you would from me. Anyone have a problem with that? The men exchanged glances, but Cole spoke first. Makes sense to me. She has already been making half the decisions anyway, and good ones. I am fine with it. The others nodded agreement. Danny looked almost excited. Does this mean she will keep giving shooting lessons? Because I've gotten a lot better since she started working with me. If she has time and is willing, Ethan said. Though I imagine she will have plenty to keep her busy otherwise. The months that followed proved him right. Winter came to Utah with snow and biting cold, and ranch work became a daily battle against the weather. Beatrice rode out with the men to check on cattle, helped repair storm damage, and spent long hours ensuring everyone was fed and warm. She proved herself capable of handling any task thrown at her, earning the deep respect of the crew. One particularly brutal week in January, a blizzard trapped them all in the ranch buildings for 3 days. Supplies ran low, tempers frayed, and the cold seeped through every crack and gap. Beatrice organized rationing, made sure the animals were cared for despite the danger, and kept everyone's spirits up with stories and songs she had learned from her father. You have got ice water in your veins, Miguel told her admiringly. Nothing rattles you. Everything rattles me, Beatrice replied honestly. I just do not see the point in showing it. When spring finally arrived and the worst danger had passed, Ethan took stock of their situation. They had lost only 4 head over the winter, far better than most ranches in the territory. The books showed they were solidly profitable, with enough capital to expand as planned, and morale among the hands was higher than it had ever been. We did it, he told Beatrice one evening in early April, the two of them watching the sunset from their porch. We survived and we are stronger for it. We did, she agreed. Though I am glad winter is over, I have had enough of snow to last me several lifetimes. I have been thinking about what you said last fall about diversifying into horses. Cole and I have been looking at some breeding stock. There is a man in Colorado selling quality mares at reasonable prices. I am thinking of taking a trip next month to look at them, maybe buy half a dozen if they are as good as he claims. That sounds wise. Do you want me to come with you? I want you to stay here and run the ranch while I am gone. He smiled at her expression. I am serious. Cole will handle the day-to-day cattle work, but I need someone making the larger decisions, someone I trust completely. That is you, Beatrice. You have earned it. I will not let you down. I know you would not. That is why I am asking. Ethan left for Colorado in early May with Danny accompanying him. Beatrice found herself in full command of the Double G Ranch for the first time, and the responsibility was both thrilling and terrifying. But the ranch ran smoothly under her management. She made decisions about grazing rotations, authorized repairs, and even negotiated with a cattle buyer who passed through looking for stock. When Ethan returned 2 weeks later with 6 beautiful mares and a young stallion, he found the ranch running better than ever. "I am almost afraid to leave again," he joked. "You might decide you do not need me." "I will always need you," Beatrice said and meant it. Over the past months, her practical affection for Ethan had deepened into something much stronger. She loved him, simply and completely. Loved his steadiness, his fairness, his quiet strength. Loved the way he respected her abilities while still being protective. Loved the life they were building together. "I love you," she said suddenly, the words surprising even herself. Ethan's eyes widened, then filled with warmth. "I love you too. Have for months now, but I was not sure you felt the same. You are so practical, so focused on the work." "I am practical about everything except this, except you." She moved into his arms. "I did not expect to fall in love when I answered your advertisement, Ethan, but I have, completely and utterly. Best decision I ever made sending for a mail-order bride," he murmured against her hair. "Though I think we can both agree you turned out to be far more than I bargained for." Summer brought prosperity to the Double G Ranch. The cattle thrived, the horses adapted well to their new home, and Beatrice discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. She had never been particularly maternal, had never spent much time around children, but the thought of carrying Ethan's child felt right. "Are you scared?" Ethan asked when she told him, his hand gentle on her still flat stomach. "Terrified," she admitted, "but also excited. We will figure it out, like we figure out everything else." "Together," he agreed. She continued working through the pregnancy, though Ethan and the men became increasingly protective as she grew larger. By autumn, she had to concede that riding was no longer practical, but she still managed the accounts and made strategic decisions from the house. Their son was born on a cold December morning in 1877, delivered by the doctor from town with Ethan pacing anxiously in the next room. The baby came squalling into the world, healthy and strong, with an impressive set of lungs and his father's gray-green eyes. "We have a son," Beatrice said wonderingly, holding the tiny bundle. "Ethan, we have a son." He sat beside her on the bed, his finger carefully touching their baby's tiny hand. "He is perfect. You are perfect. Thank you." They named him James after Beatrice's father, and he became the beloved center of their world. Beatrice discovered reserves of tenderness she had not known she possessed, and Ethan proved to be a devoted father despite his initial nervousness. The ranch hands competed for the privilege of holding the baby, and even hard-bitten Cole could be found making ridiculous faces to earn James's first smiles. Life settled into a new rhythm. Beatrice managed more from home now, balancing motherhood with ranch responsibilities. Ethan expanded their operations carefully, always consulting with her before making major decisions. They bought the southern grazing land they had discussed, hired 2 new hands to help manage the growing operation, and began building a reputation for quality cattle and excellent horses. On James's first birthday, Ethan presented Beatrice with a gift, a new pistol, custom-made with her initials engraved on the handle. "Because you are still the best shot on this ranch," he said, "and I want you to have the best equipment." She laughed, surprised and touched. "Only you would give your wife a gun for a birthday present. You are not most wives." He pulled her close, careful not to squash James, who was babbling happily between them. "You are my partner, my love, my best friend. You shoot better than my best hand. You run this place with more skill than I ever could alone, and you gave me this perfect boy. I am the luckiest man in Utah Territory." "We are both lucky," Beatrice said softly. "I came here expecting survival and found a life worth living, found love, found home." The years that followed brought both challenges and triumphs. Drought struck in 1879, testing all their skills and forcing difficult decisions about the herd. They sold off some cattle rather than watch them starve, taking a financial hit but preserving their breeding stock. Beatrice's careful management of their resources saw them through, and they emerged from the crisis with their ranch intact. 2 more children followed, a daughter named Alina in 1880 and another son, Thomas, in 1883. The house rang with laughter and chaos, children racing through rooms that had once been quiet and austere. Ethan proved himself equally capable with toddlers as with cattle, often found with a child on his shoulders while conducting ranch business. Beatrice continued to work, though she picked her battles now, focusing on the management and planning that could be done while keeping an eye on young children. She still gave shooting lessons occasionally, and her skill never diminished. Once, when a mountain lion threatened the chickens, she dropped it with a single shot from the porch, much to the amazement of a cattle buyer who had been discussing prices with Ethan. "Your wife is extraordinary," the man said, shaken. "Yes, she is," Ethan agreed calmly. "Now about those prices." The Double G Ranch became known throughout the territory as a model operation. Other ranchers came to study their methods, their diversification, their careful breeding programs. And always, they remarked on the partnership between Ethan and Beatrice Grant, the way they worked together with absolute trust and respect. "It is not common seeing a woman with so much authority," one visitor commented. "Then more ranches should try it," Ethan replied. "My wife is the smartest person I know. Why would I not want her input on everything?" In 1885, when Utah was still fighting for statehood, Beatrice gave birth to their 4th and final child, another daughter they named Catherine. The ranch was thriving, with over 500 head of cattle, 30 horses, and a reputation for excellence that brought buyers from across the West. On a warm evening in June, with the children finally asleep and the house quiet, Beatrice and Ethan sat on their porch as they had done countless times before. She leaned against him, comfortable and content. "You ever regret answering my advertisement?" Ethan asked. "Miss your old life in Philadelphia?" "Never," Beatrice said without hesitation. "That life was dying slowly. This life, what we have built together, this is everything I needed without knowing I needed it. Purpose, partnership, love, children, home. I used to think I understood what I wanted when I sent for a mail-order bride, a capable woman to help run things. But you gave me so much more than that. You gave me a real marriage, a true partnership. You made this house a home and gave me a family." He kissed the top of her head. "I would not trade a single day of our life together. Not even that first day when I showed up and walked a mile in heat that could drop a mule," she teased. "Especially not that day. That was when I first realized you were going to be trouble in the best possible way." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The ranch spread out before them, everything they had built through hard work, determination, and love. From the corrals came the gentle sounds of horses settling for the night. In the distance, cattle lowed softly. Inside the house, their children slept safely in their beds. "You remember what you said to the men after that shooting demonstration?" Beatrice asked suddenly. "After I took Jack's gun out of his hand, I said a lot of things. You told me I was running this place. That your word and mine carried equal weight. I meant it then, and I mean it now." Ethan turned to look at her in the starlight. "You have always been running this place, Beatrice, from the moment you arrived with your carpetbag and your determination. You just let me think I was in charge sometimes. She laughed. That is not true. We run it together. That is what makes it work. Partnership. Partnership, he agreed and pulled her closer. Until the end of our days. The years continued to pass, each bringing its own challenges and joys. James grew into a serious boy who loved the horses and showed signs of having his mother's steady hands. Alina was wild and fearless, climbing everything she could reach and giving her parents regular frights. Thomas was gentle and thoughtful, often found reading in corners when he should have been playing. Catherine, the baby, ruled the household with an iron will despite her small size. Beatrice taught all of them to shoot as soon as they were old enough to hold a pistol safely. You live on a ranch in Utah, she told them firmly. You need to know how to protect yourselves and handle firearms responsibly. James took to it naturally, his aim almost as good as his mother's by the time he was 12. Alina was more enthusiastic than accurate, but improving. Even Thomas, who hated the noise, learned the basics because his mother insisted. The ranch continued to prosper. Ethan and Beatrice added more land, more cattle, more horses. They built a new barn and expanded the house to accommodate their growing family. Cole, now in his 60s, finally retired from daily ranch work, but stayed on as an advisor and beloved grandfather figure to the children. In 1889, when James was 12, a wildfire swept across the territory during a brutal dry spell. The flames moved fast, consuming everything in their path. Beatrice saw the smoke from the house and immediately organized evacuation procedures. She sent the younger children to town with Cole while she, Ethan, James, and all the ranch hands fought to save their land and livestock. They worked for 3 days straight, digging fire breaks, moving cattle, and battling spot fires that jumped their barriers. Beatrice fought alongside the men, her face blackened with soot, her hands blistered, her determination absolute. When the fire finally burned itself out at the edge of their property, the Double G Ranch stood intact while several neighboring ranches had been devastated. "You saved us," Ethan said hoarsely, pulling her into his arms despite their filth and exhaustion. "Your planning, your quick thinking. We would have lost everything without you." "We saved us," she corrected. "All of us together. That is how it works." They spent months helping their neighbors rebuild, sharing resources and providing support. Beatrice organized relief efforts while Ethan loaned out equipment and workers. The community bonds forged during that crisis would last for decades, and the Grant family's generosity became legendary in the territory. When Utah finally achieved statehood in 1896, Beatrice and Ethan celebrated with their children and ranch hands, raising glasses to the future. James was 19 now, already taking on significant ranch responsibilities and courting a sensible girl from town. Alina was 16 and threatening to become a veterinarian, much to everyone's mixed pride and concern. Thomas, at 13, had discovered a talent for accounting and was already improving their bookkeeping system. Catherine, at 11, seemed determined to outshoot even her mother. "We have built something that will last," Ethan said that night, watching his children laugh and celebrate. "Not just a ranch, but a legacy, a family. And we did it together," Beatrice added, "every step of the way." The new century arrived with all its changes and challenges. Automobiles appeared on the streets of Taylorsville, though the ranch still relied on horses for most work. Telephones connected distant towns. The world was shifting, modernizing, but the fundamental work of ranching remained largely the same. James married his sweetheart in 1902 and brought her to live at the ranch, building a small house on the eastern section of the property. Alina did indeed become a veterinarian, much to the shock of many and the pride of her parents. She returned to the ranch after her training, providing services not just to the Double G but to ranches throughout the region. Thomas went to university to study business and accounting, but came home every summer to help with the books and planning. Catherine proved as good a shot as her mother and could outrope most of the ranch hands by the time she was 18. Ethan and Beatrice grew older together, their hair graying, their movements slower but no less purposeful. They remained active in ranch management even as their children took on more responsibility. The partnership that had begun with a mail-order bride advertisement had endured for over 3 decades, growing stronger with every passing year. In 1910, on the morning of their 34th wedding anniversary, Beatrice woke to find Ethan watching her with the same expression he had worn so many times over the years: love, admiration, gratitude. "What are you thinking?" she asked, reaching for his hand. "I am thinking about that day in August 1876, when I rode out to meet a woman walking down a dusty road in heat that should have killed her. I thought I was getting a mail-order bride. What I got was the love of my life." "You got a woman who could outshoot your best hand," Beatrice said with a smile. "I got so much more than that. I got a partner who made every decision with me, who fought beside me, who built this empire with her own 2 hands. I got 4 amazing children and now 3 grandchildren. I got 34 years of love and laughter and purpose." He kissed her hand gently. "I got everything I never knew I needed." "So did I," Beatrice whispered. "I came here expecting survival. I found a life beyond my wildest dreams." They spent their anniversary as they had spent so many days, working together, making decisions, watching their children and grandchildren carry on the legacy they had built. That evening, the whole family gathered for a celebration dinner. James and his wife had brought their 3 children. Eleanor had closed her veterinary practice for the day to be there. Thomas had come up from Salt Lake City, where he now managed several business accounts. Catherine arrived with her fiancé, a rancher from the next county who had won her heart with his respect for her abilities. The table was crowded and loud, filled with love and laughter. Ethan and Beatrice sat at its head, hands clasped beneath the table, watching the legacy they had created continue into the next generation. "To Mama and Papa," James said, raising his glass, "who taught us that partnership, respect, and hard work can build something lasting." "To Mama," Eleanor added, "who showed me that a woman can be anything she sets her mind to, even in a world that says otherwise." "To both of you," Thomas said, "who proved that love and business are not incompatible, that a true partnership makes everything stronger." "To the best parents anyone could ask for," Catherine finished, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for everything you have taught us." They drank the toast, and Beatrice felt tears prick her eyes. She had come to Utah Territory as a desperate woman with limited choices, expecting nothing more than survival and a roof over her head. Instead, she had found love, purpose, and a life rich beyond measure. "Thank you," she said to Ethan quietly, for his ears alone, "for seeing past the mail-order bride to the person I could become, for trusting me, respecting me, loving me." "Thank you," he replied, "for being brave enough to walk down that dusty road, for staying even when things got hard, for becoming my partner in every sense of the word." They remained at the ranch for many more years, gradually handing off daily operations to James and the others, but staying involved in major decisions. They watched their grandchildren grow, witnessed the ranch continue to thrive and expand, and took deep satisfaction in knowing they had built something that would outlast them. Ethan passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1918, at the age of 74. Beatrice held his hand as he took his last breath, whispering her love and gratitude for their 42 years together. The grief nearly broke her, but she was surrounded by children, grandchildren, and now great-grandchildren who carried both their legacies forward. She lived another 8 years, remaining sharp and active until the very end. She still gave shooting lessons to her great-grandchildren, still offered advice on ranch management, still told stories about the early days when Utah was just a territory, and the Double G Ranch was nothing but dreams and determination. When Beatrice Allen Grant died in 1926 at the age of 73, she was buried beside Ethan on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. The whole community attended the funeral, remembering the woman who had arrived as a mail-order bride and became a legend. The woman who could outshoot any man in the territory. The woman who had partnered with her husband to build one of the most successful ranches in Utah. The woman who had proven that love, respect, and hard work could create something extraordinary. At her funeral, James stood before the gathered crowd and told the story his parents had told so many times. How a desperate woman from Philadelphia had answered an advertisement. How she had walked a mile in brutal heat rather than wait to be collected. How she had proven herself capable beyond anyone's expectations. How his father had told the ranch hands after seeing her shoot, "You are running this place." And she did, James said, his voice strong despite his grief. She ran it with intelligence, courage, and grace. She ran it in partnership with my father, showing everyone what a true marriage could be. She ran it with love, building not just a business but a family and a community. And the legacy she leaves behind will continue for generations to come. The Double G Ranch continued to thrive long after Beatrice's death, passing from James to his children and beyond. The house she had managed was preserved, her custom pistol displayed in a place of honor. Stories about the mail-order bride who could outshoot anyone became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. And on quiet evenings, when the work was done and the stars emerged over the Utah landscape, the descendants of Ethan and Beatrice Grant would sometimes stand on that same porch where their ancestors had sat so many times. They would look out over the land that love and partnership had built and remember the extraordinary story of how it all began. With a woman brave enough to walk into an unknown future and a man wise enough to recognize her worth. Together, they had created something that would last forever. A testament to what two people could achieve when they worked as true partners, when they loved without reservation, and when they built their dreams on a foundation of mutual respect and shared purpose. The mail-order bride had become so much more than anyone could have predicted, and her story lived on as proof that sometimes the most practical decisions could lead to the most profound love.